Excuse me, you're not supposed to be here. The flight attendant's voice was sharp, cutting through the hum of the first-class cabin. Her arms stretched across the aisle like a barrier, blocking a tall black woman holding a boarding pass marked clearly, Seat 1A. That woman was Dr. Naomi Carter, 42 years old, a billionaire CEO whose name alone could shake boardrooms. Yet at this moment, no one looked at her title. They looked at her skin. Just behind, a white businessman in a tailored suit smirked, Rolex glinting under the cabin lights. "That's my seat. I paid for it." His words dripped arrogance, feeding the silent tension in the air. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting, waiting to see what would happen next. Naomi didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she reached into her sleek leather bag and placed a silver business card on the tray table. The embossed letters gleamed. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer. The cabin froze. In that instant, no one could have imagined that careers were about to end before the plane even left the gate. And if you think that moment was intense, wait until you see what happens when the truth comes out. Stories like this reveal what power looks like when prejudice tries to silence it. So before we dive deeper, hit that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. The hum of the jet engines was low, steady, and almost comforting. First-class passengers were still settling in. Rolling bags tucked away, jackets hung neatly, seat belts clicking into place. The smell of fresh leather and faint perfume hung in the air, a quiet luxury most people never get to experience. And then it happened. "Excuse me, you're not supposed to be here." The words didn't come soft. They came sharp, slicing through the calm like a sudden thunderclap. Everyone in the first-class cabin turned their heads. The voice belonged to Lauren, a flight attendant with a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. She stretched out her arm across the aisle like a barrier. Her perfectly manicured nails gleamed under the cabin lights. And who was she blocking? A tall black woman, elegant and calm, holding her boarding pass like anyone else. Dr. Naomi Carter. She was 42, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, her natural hair pulled neatly into a bun. She wasn't flashy, no loud jewelry, no designer bag screaming for attention. Just a simple leather purse and an aura that carried authority. But the moment Lauren's words cut through the air, it was like none of that mattered. Naomi's boarding pass read clearly, Seat 1A, first class. But Lauren wasn't looking at the ticket. She was looking at Naomi. From just a few steps behind, another passenger stepped forward, a white man in his mid-40s. His Rolex caught the overhead light, gleaming as if it was part of his identity. Thomas Whitaker. He didn't hesitate to smirk. "That's my seat," he said, his voice dripping arrogance. "I paid full price for it." The way he said full price, as if those two words separated him from her, sent a ripple through the cabin. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact altogether, burying themselves in their phones. Others, curious, tilted their heads just enough to watch. Naomi didn't flinch. She didn't snap back. Instead, a faint smile touched her lips. Without a word, she reached into her leather purse, pulled out a sleek silver business card, and placed it gently on the tray table beside her. The embossed letters gleamed under the cabin lights. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Aviation Holdings. For a moment, silence swallowed the cabin. Even the soft clatter of luggage wheels behind the curtain seemed to pause. Lauren's eyes narrowed, but her voice didn't soften. "This doesn't look right," she said, flipping Naomi's boarding pass over as if she could spot a forgery in the ink. "That seat is for full-paying passengers only." Thomas seized the moment, his smirk widening. "Exactly. I paid full price. Not everyone can." The sting of his words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Across the aisle, Evelyn Grant, a 72-year-old retired law professor, gripped her cane a little tighter. Her sharp eyes burned with quiet fury. She'd lived through the civil rights movement, watched injustice play out time and time again, and she knew exactly what this was. It wasn't about a seat. It was about who they believed deserved to sit in it. The tension built like a storm cloud ready to break. Naomi's calm voice cut through the thick silence. Seat 1A. That's my ticket. No apology. No anger. Just steady confidence. But Lauren wasn't done. She lifted her chin and called over her shoulder. Rachel, come here. We have a situation. Rachel Matthews, the lead supervisor, walked over. Her posture was rigid, her tone practiced, but her eyes gave her away. Before Naomi could speak a word, Rachel's gaze had already chosen a side. What's going on? She asked. Lauren jerked her chin toward Naomi. This passenger is trying to sit in first class with what looks like a suspicious ticket. This passenger. The distance in those two words cut deeper than a knife. Naomi stood still, saying nothing, but her presence alone carried weight. Meanwhile, from just behind the curtain, a man named Aaron Cole watched closely. A travel journalist. Aaron had boarded this flight, expecting to finish an article in peace. But the moment Lauren raised her voice, his instincts kicked in. He recognized the look, the tone, the scene. He'd seen it too many times. This isn't about a seat, he thought, fingers already tapping at his laptop. This is about power and prejudice. The air grew heavier, thicker. Passengers shifted in their seats. Some whispered. Some looked away. But no one could deny what was happening. Naomi looked at Rachel, then at Lauren, then finally at Thomas, who stood there grinning like victory was already his. She reached for her watch, glanced at the time, then spoke softly. Call the captain. Lauren scoffed. The captain is preparing for takeoff. He doesn't have time. Naomi cut her off, her voice calm but commanding. You'll want to call him. Now. And in that moment, the cabin froze again. Because Naomi Carter wasn't just a passenger. She was the storm about to break. And that's where the first cracks began to show. What no one in that cabin realized was that in less than an hour, careers would be destroyed, reputations shattered, and lives changed forever. But before we continue, tell me, what would you have done if you were sitting in that cabin, watching it unfold? Would you stay quiet, or would you speak up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't go anywhere. What Naomi does next will leave you speechless. Naomi Carter had always loved flying. Long before the boardrooms, the billion-dollar contracts, and the headlines that crowned her as one of the most powerful women in aviation, it had been just a childhood dream. She remembered sitting on the hood of her father's old Chevy in Atlanta, looking up at the night sky, watching airplanes slice through the dark like streaks of silver. She would whisper to herself, "One day, I won't just fly in those planes. I'll own them." Decades later, she had built that dream into reality. She wasn't just a CEO, she was the CEO of an aviation finance giant. Airlines signed deals at her table. Executives measured their worth against her approval. Her company's logo was stamped on aircraft across the globe. And yet here she was, standing frozen in the aisle of a first-class cabin, being told she didn't belong. Naomi adjusted her grip on her boarding pass, the crinkling paper steady in her hand. Her seat, 1A, was right in front of her. But Lauren's arm was still stretched across the aisle, blocking her path as though she were trespassing. Passengers were watching. They always watched. Thomas Whitaker, the businessman behind her, made sure of that. He stood just close enough to let his cologne and entitlement fill the air, his lips curled into a smug half-smile. "I said that's my seat," he repeated. "You're holding us up. Some of us actually have important meetings to get to." Naomi turned slightly to face him. Her voice was calm. "You have 2B. I have 1A. Thomas snorted. "We'll see about that." He adjusted his cufflinks, like a man who was certain the world would side with him. Rachel, the lead supervisor, stepped in now. Her tone was measured, professional, but Naomi could hear the edge. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify your ticket." "Verify?" Naomi asked. She handed over the pass without hesitation. "Go ahead." Rachel studied it, flipping it once, twice, as though it were counterfeit money. She squinted at the print. She even held it up under the overhead light. Then, without handing it back, she turned to Thomas. "Sir, may I see yours as well?" Thomas smirked, digging into his jacket pocket with a showy flourish. He handed over his boarding pass, but not before letting the corner of it hang in the air, like he was holding a winning lottery ticket. "Seat 2B, Rachel confirmed. Thomas raised his chin. Exactly. Which means... No, Naomi interrupted, her voice slicing through the cabin like glass. Which means I am in 1A, and I'm still standing here waiting to sit down. Gasps rippled through the aisle. A few passengers dared to make eye contact with Naomi, then quickly looked away. Evelyn, the elderly law professor across the aisle, tapped her cane once against the carpet. Her sharp gaze burned into Rachel. You see the ticket. You see the seat. Let the woman sit down. Rachel stiffened. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a matter for the crew to resolve. But Evelyn didn't budge. I've spent 70 years watching this same script play out. Don't think I don't recognize it. Her words hung heavy in the air. Rachel ignored her and turned to Lauren, who still stood with her arm across the aisle. Keep her here, she ordered. Naomi inhaled deeply. Her calm never cracked, but inside, she felt that old familiar sting, the kind that came from years of being second-guessed, undermined, doubted. She remembered one particular meeting years ago, when a rival executive had leaned across the table and told her, "You're impressive, Naomi. But be honest, you're only here because of quotas." She'd smiled then, too. Smiled, and then signed a deal that had crushed his company 6 months later. Now, that same steel settled into her bones. This is not about safety, Naomi said softly. This is about bias. And you know it. Lauren flinched at the word, but Thomas only laughed. Bias? Don't make this bigger than it is. It's a seat. Don't be dramatic. Naomi turned to him, meeting his eyes without blinking. You want one so badly? Let's see if you can handle what comes with it. A flicker of unease crossed Thomas's face, but it vanished just as quickly. Rachel exhaled sharply, her patience thinning. She gestured toward the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the plane. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have no choice but to move you back to premium economy. Naomi's lips curved into the faintest smile. Is that so? She reached in her bag once again, but this time it wasn't for her boarding pass. It was for her phone. The sleek black device gleamed in her hand as she swiped the screen and lifted it to her ear. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Yes, it's Naomi. I'm on a New York flight. It's happening again. Passengers craned their necks. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes sparking with curiosity. Aaron, the journalist, typed faster, his fingers racing over his keyboard. Naomi's next words were low, but clear enough for the rows around her to hear. Handle it. She ended the call and slipped the phone back in her bag as if nothing had happened. Then she looked directly at Rachel. You have two choices. Either you let me sit in the seat I paid for, or you call the captain. But understand this. Whatever happens next will not end here. Not for you. Not for him. Her eyes flicked toward Thomas. The cabin was silent now, every passenger caught in the tension. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed distant, muffled by the weight of the moment. Rachel swallowed hard, torn between protocol and the creeping realization that she was up against someone she did not fully understand. And then the curtain behind them rustled. A figure stepped through, broad-shouldered, uniform crisp, cap tucked under his arm. The captain. His eyes swept the scene, his expression unreadable, and the cabin held its breath. The question now wasn't whether Naomi belonged in 1A. The question was what the captain would say when he realized who he was really dealing with. If you were the captain walking into that cabin, what would you do? Back up your crew, or stand for what's right? Drop your answer in the comments, because Naomi's next move will leave you stunned. And trust me, this flight is only just beginning. The cabin seemed to shrink as the captain stepped through the curtain, his polished shoes silent against the carpet. His uniform was immaculate, the 4 gold stripes on his shoulders gleaming under the overhead lights. Every passenger's eyes followed him, but it was Rachel's stiff posture that betrayed the tension most. She straightened immediately, her voice pitched with forced respect. "Captain Miller," she said, "we're resolving a seating issue." Miller's eyes swept the scene. Lauren's arms stretched across the aisle, Thomas smirking behind Naomi, Evelyn watching like a hawk from across the row. Finally, his gaze landed on Naomi. Calm, composed, still standing with her hand resting lightly on the headrest of seat 1A. What kind of issue? His voice was steady, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. Rachel lifted the 2 boarding passes. This passenger insists that 1A is her seat. But not insists. Naomi cut in, her voice low but sharp. Confirms. Because it is my seat. A flicker passed across Miller's expression. Not irritation, recognition. Naomi Carter. He'd seen her once before, years back at an industry gala. She'd been on stage, shaking hands with aircraft manufacturers and global airline CEOs. If he hadn't recognized her face, the name on the boarding pass in Rachel's hand would have told him everything. But Thomas didn't notice the shift. He stepped forward, puffing his chest. Captain, thank God you're here. We got some confusion with this lady here. She's clearly in the wrong seat, holding us up. The way he emphasized lady twisted in the air like a blade. Evelyn's cane tapped again. A warning. Miller didn't look at Thomas. He looked at Rachel. Boarding pass. Rachel handed it over without a word. He scanned it quickly. Passenger Carter. Seat 1A. He turned to Thomas. And yours. 2B. Thomas said, with a forced laugh. But Captain, come on. Look at this. Look at her. Does she look like someone who belongs in? Enough. The word landed like a thunderclap. Miller's voice was firm now. His eyes locked on Thomas until the smirk faltered. But before Naomi could speak, Lauren stepped back in. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Captain, with all respect, there was concern about her behavior. Concern? Naomi asked. Her eyebrow arched. For standing in front of my assigned seat. Lauren swallowed hard, but Miller didn't turn to her this time. His gaze stayed fixed on Naomi, as if he was silently calculating something bigger than just this argument. Ms. Carter, he said finally, lowering his voice, I assure you will get this resolved. But I need you to trust the process. Naomi studied him. His tone was respectful, but the phrase, trust the process, rang hollow. It was the same kind of language people had used her entire career when they wanted her to sit quietly while decisions were made about her. This time, she had no intention of staying quiet. Captain, she said evenly, do you know what happens when a global story about discrimination breaks mid-flight? Do you know how fast your airline's name will circle the world before we even land? Rachel stiffened. Thomas let out a scoff, muttering something about drama queens, but Miller didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed slightly, measuring her words. You think I'm bluffing, Naomi said. And then she moved. She slid her phone out of her bag again, this time not to make a call, but to open her camera. With one smooth motion, she angled it toward herself and the crew, the passengers visible in the background. This, she said, her voice carrying through the cabin, is a live recording, documenting how your airline treats a black female CEO in the seat she paid for. Gasps rippled instantly. Aaron, the journalist, sat straighter in his seat, his own phone now in hand. Evelyn leaned forward, a proud spark lighting her weary eyes. Rachel's face drained of color. Ma'am, you can't. I can, Naomi said, and I will. Thomas lunged forward slightly, reaching as if to block the camera. This is ridiculous. Naomi turned the lens on him, her voice calm but cutting. Name and occupation, please? Or would you rather the world just see your face? Thomas froze. Lauren lowered her arm from the aisle. The barrier was gone. The tension tightened like a rope about to snap. Miller raised a hand, his voice sharp now, commanding authority that filled the cabin. Enough. All of you. For a moment, silence returned. Then Miller turned to Naomi. Ms. Carter, please sit in your rightful seat. No one else will disturb you. Rachel blinked, shocked. Thomas muttered a curse under his breath. But Naomi didn't move, not yet. She studied Miller carefully, her expression unreadable, because this wasn't about a seat anymore. It was about the line that had been drawn. Naomi lowered her phone slowly, the camera still running. I'll sit, she said, but understand, this doesn't end when the seatbelt sign turns on. This doesn't end when we land. Every decision, every word, every second of this moment is already out there. She slid gracefully into 1A, setting her phone on the armrest, lens still angled to capture the crew. The cabin exhaled as though it had been holding its breath. But the story wasn't over. Because as Miller turned to return to the cockpit, his earpiece crackled. A flight attendant's voice filtered through. "Captain, operations is on the line. They've been alerted about a situation." Miller's jaw tightened. He glanced back once more at Naomi, still calm, still recording, and knew exactly what had just happened. She hadn't made a threat. She'd set a chain reaction in motion, and the airline was already scrambling to contain it. The crew thought the fight was over, but Naomi's quiet move had pulled the airline itself into the cabin. If you were in Naomi's seat now, would you keep recording, or shut it down and let the airline come crawling first? Comment your answer, because Hour 4 is where the real storm breaks. And trust me, this flight hasn't even reached cruising altitude. The captain's jaw tightened as his earpiece crackled again. The dispatcher's voice carried urgency, barely masked by professionalism. "Captain Miller, operations has flagged your flight. Passenger Naomi Carter is identified. You are instructed to manage the situation discreetly. Do not escalate." Miller closed his eyes for half a second. Too late for that. He turned slowly toward the cabin. Naomi sat poised in 1A, her phone angled like a quiet witness. Rachel and Lauren hovered behind her, pale and stiff. Thomas, now shoved back to 2B by a watchful Evelyn's cane, was fuming, his lips moving in muttered complaints. The cabin air vibrated with unspoken tension. Then Naomi's phone chimed, loud enough for everyone in first class to hear. She glanced at the screen, and a faint smile touched her lips. "Interesting," she said softly, almost to herself. Aaron, the journalist, leaned forward. "What's happening?" Naomi didn't hide it. She turned her screen just enough for the nearest passengers to see. A stream of notifications rolled in, LinkedIn messages, emails, even news alerts. Somehow, the story was already moving. Aaron's eyes widened. "Someone leaked this already?" Naomi tilted her head. "I don't need to leak anything. The truth leaks itself when people pay attention." Rachel snapped then, her voice too loud, too brittle. "This is not a spectacle, Ms. Carter. You're disrupting the peace of this cabin." "Peace?" Naomi's gaze was icy. "Peace ended when your colleague blocked me from my seat. What I'm doing now is ensuring the world knows it." Thomas couldn't hold it in anymore. He shot up from his seat, voice booming over everyone. "This is ridiculous. We're all being held hostage by some woman throwing a tantrum. You all see what she's doing." Evelyn slammed her cane against the floor. The crack rang out sharp. "Sit down, boy, or I'll make you." The cabin gasped, half shocked, half amused. Thomas sputtered but sank back reluctantly, glaring daggers at Naomi. Passengers were dividing. A young mother in row 3 spoke up nervously. "Honestly, I don't care about her seat, but can we just move on? Some of us have connections to make." "Move on," Evelyn barked. "You want her to just swallow it, so your schedule's tidy? That's how this keeps happening." A man across the aisle chimed in, voice sharp. "Yeah, but she's making a circus out of it. Phones, threats, what's next? Shutting down the whole flight." Naomi's head turned slowly toward him. Her expression was unreadable, but her next words carried like iron. "What's next," she said, "is accountability." And then she stood again, calmly, gracefully. But this time, instead of addressing the crew, she tapped her phone screen twice. A small green light blinked at the top corner. Live. Passengers realized instantly what she had done. A murmur rippled through the cabin, some horrified, others secretly thrilled. "You're live streaming this?" Rachel's voice cracked. Naomi's eyes never left hers. "Correct. Every passenger here is now a witness. And so is anyone watching on the ground." Aaron nearly dropped his own phone. "This is unbelievable." He fumbled, pulling up the stream. The viewer count ticked upward at a dizzying pace. Hundreds, then thousands within seconds. Lauren whispered frantically to Rachel, "We have to shut it down. Policy says." "Policy?" Naomi cut her off. "Your policy tried to erase me from a seat I rightfully own. My policy is truth." Thomas sprang up again, face red. "This is harassment. She's harassing the entire cabin with her little stunt." "No," a quiet voice countered. Everyone turned. It was the young mother from row 3, her baby asleep in her arms. "What you're feeling now? Embarrassed. Exposed. That's what she felt when she was told she didn't belong. The cabin froze. It was the first time a passenger who hadn't seemed invested before openly sided with Naomi. Rachel's composure cracked further. She turned to the captain. "We can't allow this, sir. We need to." But Miller raised a hand, silencing her. His voice was low, steady, but filled with resignation. "We're past what we can allow. The airline is watching this live now. Every word, every face, every action." Naomi lowered the phone slightly, her gaze sweeping across the cabin. "Then let's be clear. I am Naomi Carter, CEO, black woman, passenger, and I will not be erased." The cabin erupted. Half the passengers applauded, the other half groaned in frustration. The divide was no longer silent. It was loud, chaotic, uncontainable. Rachel muttered something under her breath about lawsuits. Thomas shouted again about attention seekers. Evelyn laughed, a rich, proud sound that cut through all of it. Naomi just sat back down in 1A, her live stream angled perfectly, her calm composure like armor. The airline had tried to intervene quietly, but Naomi had made it public. And now, there was no turning back. Naomi's boldest move yet wasn't shouting, wasn't fighting. It was going live, pulling the entire world into the cabin with her. The passengers were divided, the crew was cornered, and the airline itself was under the microscope. The chat feed on Naomi's live stream was a blur, hundreds of comments a second. "What's happening? OMG, she's the CEO of Meridian? Racism live, share this." The viewer count ticked past 20,000. Then 30. Rachel's hands trembled as she whispered to the captain, "We need to shut this down. Now, this could destroy the airline." Captain Miller's gaze stayed locked on Naomi, who sat upright in 1A, phone angled deliberately, her every move calm and controlled. "Rachel," he said, "if you touch that phone, you'll be the face of this mess forever. Sit tight." But the airline wasn't sitting tight. The intercom above crackled. "Captain Miller, this is ground operations. We need you to secure Passenger Carter's phone immediately. Do not let her broadcast." Everyone in first class heard it. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Naomi's lips curled into the faintest smile. "So even your own people admit this is about silencing me." Thomas sneered. "It's about silencing your tantrum, lady. Nobody wants to watch this circus." Aaron, the journalist, shook his head. "Correction. Millions will want to watch this." He angled his own phone. His screen showed the live stream count exploding, 50,000, 60, 70, and then the kicker. Notifications buzzed across his screen. Major outlets were already embedding the feed. Headlines flashed. "CEO confronts racism mid-flight, streamed live. Passenger humiliated in first class as thousands watch." The story had gone global, and they were still sitting at the gate. Rachel's face drained of color. This could ground us permanently." Lauren muttered, "She can't get away with this." But Naomi wasn't finished. She adjusted her phone slightly, speaking directly into the lens now, her voice steady, measured, every word designed to land. "My name is Dr. Naomi Carter. I boarded this flight with a valid ticket for seat 1A. I was told, in front of dozens of witnesses, that I did not belong, that my ticket must be fake. That first class is reserved for people who deserve it. You're seeing this live. You're hearing it for yourself. This isn't a story about air travel. This is a story about how racism hides behind policies, uniforms, and fake smiles. And tonight, it ends." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Evelyn slapped her cane against the floor with approval. A college student, too, rose back, whispered, She's incredible." But Rachel was shaking. She pressed her earpiece. "Ground, she's actively broadcasting corporate liability. Do we force her off the flight?" The answer came fast, sharp, and panicked. "No physical confrontation. Repeat, do not lay hands on her. Cameras are everywhere." Rachel's lips pressed tight. She turned away, humiliated. Thomas, red-faced, leaned across the aisle. "You think this little stunt will get you sympathy? All it's going to do is tank the airline stock. People like you." "Careful." Naomi cut him off, her eyes burning into his. "The world is listening to every syllable that leave your mouth. Choose wisely." He froze. For the first time since boarding, The smug confidence faltered. Aaron, still glued to his screen, suddenly looked up, eyes wide. Naomi, the White House just reposted this. Someone in the administration shared your stream. Naomi's expression didn't change, but her voice carried an edge of satisfaction. Good. That means they're watching too. The cabin was no longer just an airplane, it was a stage. Every gesture, every word was being magnified across the globe. Ground operations tried another tactic. The loudspeaker clicked again, voice stern but pleading. Passenger Carter, this is Delta Corporate. We're asking you to end the live stream voluntarily. We acknowledge your concerns, and we're prepared to discuss appropriate compensation. Passengers' jaws dropped. The airline itself was negotiating with her, live, over the intercom. Naomi leaned closer to her phone, her voice sharp now. Compensation is not accountability, and I don't negotiate in the dark. If you want to make this right, say it here, live, with everyone watching. The cabin broke into applause. Evelyn shouted, "Tell them, baby." Rachel's knees weakened. This is a nightmare. Captain Miller rubbed his temples. He had flown for 30 years. Never had he seen anything like this. The live stream count ticked past 150,000. Comments poured in. She's a hero. This airline is done. Stay strong, Queen. Naomi paused, then delivered her boldest move yet. She tapped her phone again, splitting the screen. Her assistant appeared on video from a Manhattan office, headset on, papers in hand. Dr. Carter, the assistant said briskly, I have the shareholder report you requested. Gasps shot through the cabin. Naomi nodded. Read it. The assistant did, naming the airline's parent company, the subsidiaries, and a staggering percentage of shares owned by Meridian Aviation Holdings. Naomi's company. Thomas's mouth fell open. Rachel gripped a seat back for balance. Even the captain froze. Naomi looked directly into the lens. So, for the record, this isn't just my seat. This is my plane. And every employee who thought humiliation was acceptable tonight should be very, very nervous about tomorrow. The cabin went dead silent. And then the comments exploded. She owns the airline. This is legendary. They're done. Career's over. Rachel's lips parted, but no words came out. Lauren looked like she might faint. Thomas slumped into his seat, defeated. Naomi ended her assistant's call and returned her gaze calmly to the passengers. The live stream will stay on until this plane is in the air. That way, no one forgets how this began or how it ended. The power had shifted completely. Naomi wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was in command. The cabin lights flickered as ground staff worked the gate, but inside the aircraft, it felt less like a plane and more like a courtroom, or maybe a battlefield. Aaron's phone buzzed violently, almost overheating in his hand. He looked down and gasped. Naomi, you're trending #1 on Twitter. Global. Hashtags are everywhere. Passengers leaned forward, straining to hear. Aaron's voice cracked with disbelief. Celebrities are sharing the stream. Civil rights leaders. Even politicians. This isn't just a story, it's the story. Naomi adjusted the camera slightly. Her face calm, voice clear. Good. Let them see. The feed was now pushing past 500,000 live viewers. Comments scrolled so fast they blurred. This is history. Stay strong, Queen Naomi. Fire the racists now. Rachel's knuckles whitened on the seat back. Captain, this is spiraling out of control. We have to shut it down before. The intercom blared. A new voice, deep and commanding, filled the cabin. This is Congressman Harris speaking. Dr. Carter, if you can hear this, know that you are not alone. We are demanding accountability from the airline as we speak. The cabin gasped. Evelyn clutched her chest. Did that man just say, Congressman? Aaron confirmed it, eyes wide. A sitting congressman just went live on her stream. Rachel looked like she might faint. This can't be real. But it was only the beginning. Naomi's phone buzzed again. Her assistant patched in another guest, this time a woman with fiery eyes and a sharp blazer. Naomi, this is Angela Cortez, civil rights attorney. I'm on standby. If they try to touch you, I'll have an injunction filed within the hour. Cheers broke out across half the cabin. Passengers clapped. Someone whistled. Thomas groaned, burying his face in his hands. This is insane. It's just a damn seat. Naomi turned toward him, voice icy. It was never about the seat. It was about what people think when someone like me sits in it. Before Thomas could respond, another notification flashed across the live stream. This time from a name even Rachel recognized instantly. Amaris Sinclair. The globally celebrated human rights commissioner had shared Naomi's stream, writing only, "We see you. We stand with you." The cabin erupted. Phones buzzed. Evelyn's eyes welled up. "Lord have mercy. The whole world's in here with us." Rachel staggered back, pale as chalk. "Captain, we've lost control of this narrative. Corporate's panicking. They're begging us to deplane quietly." Naomi didn't flinch. "Deplane me, and you'll do it on camera. In front of every lawyer, activist, and voter in this country." Aaron whispered to himself. She's untouchable now. But the storm outside was only growing. Reporters were already live at the terminal. Protesters had begun gathering outside the airport. Chants echoed faintly through the glass walls. Inside, passengers divided more loudly. Some clapped and cheered Naomi. Others cursed under their breath about missed meetings and ruined schedules. A man in business class shouted forward, "Lady, enough already. We've been sitting here an hour because of you." Naomi raised her phone, her tone razor-sharp. "No, you've been sitting here an hour because of a system that thought I didn't belong. I won't carry the blame for their prejudice." The livestream chat exploded with support. Then came another twist. A familiar face joined the split-screen feed. A famous Hollywood actress, tears in her eyes. "Naomi, I was watching this at home. What you're doing matters. Millions of little girls who look like you're seeing this right now, and they'll never forget it." Passengers clapped again. Even the young mother from row 3 lifted her phone high, waving it like a flag of solidarity. Rachel collapsed into a seat, whispering to herself, "We're finished. This airline is finished." Captain Miller, sweating, received another call in his earpiece. This time he spoke aloud, unable to hide the tremor in his voice. "Corporate says Naomi Carter now has the power to ground this flight permanently. They want me to de-escalate, offer apologies, anything she demands." Naomi's eyebrow arched. "Anything?" Rachel stammered. "They'll refund, compensate, even." Naomi silenced her with a look. Then she spoke directly into the camera. "I don't want their money. I don't want a voucher. What I want is accountability. I want every crew member who participated in this humiliation removed from duty, effective immediately." The words hit like a grenade. Passengers gasped. Rachel's jaw dropped. Lauren's knees buckled. Even Thomas blinked in shock. The chat went wild. "Yes, Queen, fire them all. Accountability, not excuses." This is history in real time. Rachel finally broke. "You can't do that. You're just a passenger. You can't." Naomi leaned in, her voice cold steel. "I'm not just a passenger. I am your employer's employer. And if they don't act now, I will." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Captain Miller couldn't speak. For 30 years, he had commanded planes. Tonight, the plane belonged to her. Outside the window, more protesters pressed against the glass, their chants louder now, echoing into the cabin. Justice for Naomi. No racism in the skies. The world was no longer watching. The world was demanding. Naomi ended the moment with one chilling line into her live stream. "This flight will not leave this gate until justice takes off with it." The screen glowed brighter as the viewer count soared past 1 million. The cabin was quiet in the strangest way. Not peaceful, but heavy. Every passenger sat upright, breathing shallowly, watching Naomi as though the next word she spoke might change history. Captain Miller stood in the aisle, sweat staining his collar. His earpiece buzzed again with frantic voices from corporate. He listened, jaw tight, then finally spoke, his voice grave. "They've made a decision." Rachel straightened, desperate. "Finally. Tell her we'll compensate. Tell her." Miller cut her off. His eyes locked on Naomi. "Corporate is terminating the employment of all crew involved. Effective immediately. You've won, Dr. Carter." The words landed like thunder. Gasps erupted across the cabin. Evelyn clapped her hands together. The young mother in row 3 whispered, "She actually did it." Rachel collapsed in her seat, face drained of all color. Lauren covered her mouth in shock, tears brimming. But Naomi didn't smile. She didn't move. She simply kept the live stream steady, letting millions witness the announcement. Aaron murmured, "Naomi, it's over." They gave in. Naomi's eyes flickered, calm and deliberate. "No, Aaron, it's not over yet." She stood, stepping into the aisle with the poise of a queen. The camera caught her every movement. They've admitted fault, but accountability without transparency is just theater. The world deserves more than a press release. They deserve a reckoning. Passengers leaned forward. The chat exploded. "What's she doing now? Queen energy. Don't stop now. Make it permanent." Naomi turned to Captain Miller. "Announce it officially. On this live stream. Not behind closed doors. Let the world hear the words from you." Miller froze. His lips trembled. "Dr. Carter, I'm not authorized to." Naomi's voice sliced through the air. "Then authorize yourself. Because if you don't, this flight never leaves the ground." He hesitated, looking at the sea of phones recording him. His decades of service, his spotless reputation, all hung in the balance. Finally, he lifted the intercom with shaking hands. His voice boomed through the cabin and into the live stream heard by millions. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Effective immediately, the airline has terminated the employment of crew members who acted with bias or misconduct against Dr. Carter. This airline does not condone discrimination in any form." The cabin erupted into cheers. People clapped, some even stood. But Naomi raised her hand, quieting the noise. She wasn't finished. "Captain, thank you. But one more thing remains." Her gaze locked on Rachel. The flight attendant flinched as if she'd been struck. Naomi's voice was steady, merciless. "You owe me an apology." Not whispered backstage. Not behind closed doors. Here. Now. On camera. For every black woman who has ever been told she doesn't belong. Rachel's lips trembled. "Dr. Carter, Say it." Naomi pressed, voice low but unyielding. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes as millions watched. I was wrong. I judged you by your skin instead of your worth. And I'm sorry. Deeply sorry." Naomi held the silence, letting the words hang heavy, letting the world see the weight of them. Then she nodded once. "Apology accepted. But forgiveness is not a free pass. Learn from this. Change or step aside for those who will." The cabin broke into applause again, louder, rawer. Even Thomas, still shaken, bowed his head. The livestream chat exploded with emotion. Chills. Literal chills. She made history right here. This is bigger than a flight. This is a movement. Then Naomi delivered her final blow. She turned the camera on herself and spoke directly to the millions watching. "Tonight, we proved something. That silence is the ally of oppression. That dignity has power. That when you stand firm, you don't just change a seat, you change the whole system." She paused, eyes fierce, unblinking. "This isn't the end. It's the beginning. And I promise you, from this day forward, no airline, no boardroom, no gatekeeper will ever decide where we belong. We decide." The cabin erupted again. Cheers, tears, chants echoing through the aisles. Outside, protesters roared louder, their voices bleeding into the aircraft like thunder. Naomi ended the live stream with a single, immortal line. "Justice has boarded, and it's not getting off." The screen went black. The world had watched justice unfold, live on a grounded flight. The airline surrendered. The crew fell. Naomi Carter transformed humiliation into history, leaving millions stunned and inspired. If this moment shook you, imagine what happens when Naomi takes this fight beyond the skies. Would you follow her movement wherever it goes? Subscribe, like, and share this story, because movements don't spread by themselves. They spread when communities like ours carry them higher.